When we're in a state of worry, we tie ourselves to something that is beyond our control, a potential future that may or may not even happen. But with the right solution, we can regain a center of calmness. Welcome back to the Center of Calmness, and today we have Sanya Jalal here with us. Welcome to broadcast, Sanya.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So today we're covering the topic of worry and the transition of worry toward calmness. Really excited to talk about that. But first, I'm curious. You're coming in from Australia to us today. How are things in Australia these days?
So I'm in Victoria, and that we're up to stage 4 restrictions. Everyone's experiencing different emotions, and it's quite interesting in that sense. Yeah, some people are okay with the restrictions. Some people are finding it hard. Yeah, but we'll get through it.
I can definitely understand that. Things have been difficult here as well, although we've had some freedom, particularly within the critical industries, to keep working here. And I'm actually coming out of Houston today, Houston, Texas. Just curious, for what troubles folks in Australia the most? Is it the COVID situation itself, or is it the economy? What do you find that causes folks the most worry right now?
I guess it's a combination of things. There are people that have lost their jobs, which is a concern, and then there's just the fact that it's restricted. You all have to wear masks and can't go past certain kilometers, and so everyone's battling their own. They have their own conflicts and challenges with those things. Yeah.
That's a very difficult situation. So routines are disrupted, stress level is an all-time high. Now, when you talk with folks, what do you find their deepest worries and fears tend to be? Of course, the situation is stressful as a whole, but I've noticed, at least in my own experience, that individuals usually have some kind of root worry that's really got them concerned. That the environment, the economy, the situation only helps to accentuate. What do you find that strikes people the deepest?
Yeah, there's definitely an underlying fear, isolation, being alone, and it's all externally. It all just seems like there's changes there. People can't visit their families or their friends. But really underneath it all, if you think about it, it's just fear of being alone, or fear of living small, I guess, not to be able to have that freedom to move around, to do what they want.
Of course, lack of freedom of choice and the ability as well to do the right things to provide them for themselves, for their families, and maintain connections with their friends. Yeah, certainly. Seen lots of that here as well. Now, if I could ask, how did you get involved in the line of coaching that you're involved with, and to begin treating and coming up with solutions for worry and similar emotional problems?
Years ago, I was actually, I guess my weakness is emotions as well as. So I had to actually turn it to one of my strengths, and I'm someone that can easily feel people's emotions and also get quite emotional. And so I wanted to learn more about emotions, and I came across, it was actually through a podcast that I came across a couple who were talking about emotions and things, and their concept was based on Carl Jung's work, and to me that made a lot of sense, even though it's quite the inverse of what we're normally taught in our society. And so one thing led to the other. As I became to learn more about it, I got quite passionate about their work, and I wanted to help people to basically push beyond these barriers that we set ourselves in our mind, basically allowing those emotions to drive us rather than being able to control them.
I see.
Yeah.
You mentioned Carl Jung. What did you find in his work or his principles, practices that really spoke to you with regard to emotional confidence and elimination of worry and similar things?
So a lot of the work out there these days, or generally speaking, is about positivity, and we have a tendency to label things as negative, positive, good, bad, and we avoid those negativities. Um, and also, even like in therapy, it's about fixing and healing as if we're damaged or we're broken. Whereas Carl Jung's work is all about um, acknowledging everything, whether it's good or bad. It's actually us as humans that we've labeled those things in that way. But if we acknowledge in things that we don't like or things that we reject, um, we're actually integrating it into ourselves and bringing our wholeness into that. And by doing that, we're freeing ourselves. So if we're actually thinking about positivity all the time, it's almost like wearing a makeup. You have something underneath. You're covering it, but doesn't mean that it's not there. It's there. It's just not seen. Um, so Carl Jung's work is actually going to the roots, working at a deeper level, bringing those things that we're not conscious of to the surface and integrating it as part of ourselves. Yeah, so that to me it made more sense.
Sounds great. Now you mentioned digging to the root and finding those things that we may not even be conscious of. What solutions are available within Carl Jung's or your other studies that kind of help us discover those hidden elements, those the hidden drivers that we need to acknowledge?
So the best way, and my work is a combination of Carl Jung work as well as Eastern philosophy. So we have to see this world as not just a materialistic world, uh, as a conscious world. It is a conscious world, and we have more power than just our little selves, our physical beings. So we're part of this, part of this universe, unlimited. And so that's the first part, to perceive things in a different way. And the second part is anything that bothers us, whether it's an event like this whole pandemic situation, whether it's someone that we see and they behave differently or in a way that it triggers us. It's all a reflection of ourselves that we're not aware of. So the world is actually there for us, like a mirror, reflecting back things that we're not aware of ourselves, or things that we may have just hidden it without noticing, more as something that we didn't like, or because we've got an ego that helps us to survive in this world by having this persona. Um, but anything that we're not putting in our persona, as in our personality, it's actually gone in our unconscious part. So by actually working with those triggers, we can actually bring those into consciousness. For example, if someone is angry out there and we don't like that, then clearly or like we get triggered. Clearly, there's anger in us that wants to be shown, and we need to sit with that emotion, integrate it, um, and by doing that, we're freeing ourselves. So next time, or it might take a few times, but over time we'll realize that that anger will no longer bother us. If someone's angry, if it doesn't bother us, then it has nothing to do with us because we've worked with our unconscious part. We've already integrated that.
Well, it's really neat. So if I understand what you're saying, it's almost just a matter of being conscious, present in the moment as we go through our life, and to observe that reflection we're getting from the world, from as we interact with others, as we go about our regular business, and pay attention to those trigger points, and then begin the
Yeah.
acknowledgement and integration process.
Yeah, yeah. It's really about mindfulness, being in the present moment, and rather than seeing the world as as the cause of things, we got to see ourselves as our inner world as the cause and the external world as the reflection.
Interesting. Now, with regard to mindfulness, do you have any techniques you could share with us that are relatively straightforward to help someone who perhaps is a little scattered to bring themselves into mindfulness and be able to perceive these things?
Yeah. So initially, I would ask my clients to um, try, if their mind is all scattered, the best technique is just the basic meditation, which is breathing in and out, 10 to 15 minutes, a couple of times a day. And while they're doing that, they just got to focus on the breath. And our ego has a tendency to get distracted, to try to distract us because it'll be a new habit. So we'll have a lot of thoughts everywhere. We just got to bring our mind back to that present moment, that this is what I'm here for. I do not need to be anywhere else. I'm here for this practice, and just keep on paying attention to that breath. As we do that, we're calming ourselves, we're centering ourselves. Another technique is we can always go out bare feet on the grass, just step there, stand there and try to connect with the ground, with the earth, and just feel rooted. So that's a good practice that I use on every morning. Yeah, it'll be great if it's a sunny day. If it's not, it doesn't matter. Rain is just as beautiful. To do that
Absolutely.
and just feel like you've got roots in your feet and just connect to the earth. And in terms of our emotions, so if we're feeling worried, just gotta make time. So a lot of these things does require time. We have a tendency to distract ourselves, go, oh well, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and that's only because unconsciously we're afraid of facing these emotions. So we gotta make time and just sit with those emotions, invite those emotions rather than ignoring them. So if we're feeling worried, I would just, you know, sit there and close my eyes, look at where I'm feeling that sensation, and then bring it out in front of me and see what form it is, what color it is, and just observe it from a higher point of ourselves. So without judging it, just observe it and see whether it changes, and if it doesn't, that's fine. We're just by doing that, we're bringing that in our, from unconscious to that conscious state. And then we can shift to what we want to feel. How do we want to feel without changing that state, and bring that emotion in? So as we work on that, it could take a day, it could take a week. Over time, we'll see that shift in us, and it helps us become more in control of those emotions.
It's really neat, a very deliberate process, but not too difficult as long as we remain consistent, right?
Yeah, so I guess the hardest thing in life is working with our own mind. it does take practice. It does take guidance, uh, because our ego is basically there to help us survive, and it doesn't mean that it likes new things. It's just used to the old patterns,
Right.
and these kind of situations only magnifies those basically fears or conditioning, the past conditioning we've had. Um, so our ego knows all the codes to our mind, and it will do as best as it can to avoid facing these kind of emotions or new challenges. So yeah, we just got to be persistent, patient, compassionate about with ourselves and with others as well, to go through this process.
Absolutely. I've definitely had plenty of experience with my ego, and almost none of them have been positive. The ego is
Mhm.
such a powerful self-defense mechanism, which, of course, like you
Yeah,
said, is useful in some cases. But as far as progressing, moving forward, changing patterns, and growing and developing, often a hindrance, right? I'm curious, and of course, the advantage you would have as a coach is that your clients can rely on you, right, to help carry them through, where they don't have to process all this individually, but can rely on your coaching, and perhaps a joint session or something to help them through the emotional state of worry, or other situations that y'all may encounter. Might you have a story of a recent client where you were able to kind of help them through this kind of a process?
sorry, I just missed that. Do
Oh,
I
that's
have a
okay.
recent client?
Yeah, a client that you mentioned that it was very difficult. It's very difficult for an individual to work within their own mind due to the ego. I was wondering if you might have an example of where you were able to help someone work through this process, with your support.
Yeah, so it's I guess I would just keep it general, but
Of course.
when someone comes and goes, look, I'm just feeling so anxious. And the first thing I just get them to do is center themselves and remind themselves that they're not. So our physical being, our physical form is just a little part of us. We're so much bigger than that. So just by that, it just helps them shift their mindset that, they're not the victim here, or there's not this whole heavy thing in the world that they have to carry. They're much bigger than that. And then just like I just get them to look within, close their eyes, focus on where that sensation is, and I guide them through that basically. It does, the first session might be a small relief, but it still helps them to get out of that, I guess, that darkness they see themselves in,
Hmm.
or battle that, they're not happy. Often, um, people have this thing about, oh, I'm not happy, and I should be happy. But if we actually acknowledge that it's okay, that sometimes we can be unhappy, then it's okay. All we have to be mindful is that we will get through this. It's just an emotion. So it just gives them a different perspective. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, our time is almost finished here. I want to just transition into perhaps just a brief mention of your own coaching program that you've been working on over the past years. I wondered if you might just give us a little description of who you primarily work with, and then lead into how folks can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I'm current. I guess I work with people who, in terms of if they're interested in emotional wisdom on how to manage their emotions, and I also work with single women who are interested in expressing themselves. Um, Often we have trouble expressing our true selves, and to create uh, the relationships that they want, and in terms of finding their true love, um, all that. Yeah.
Excellent. So I have your information here that I wish to show for the audience. So there's Sonia, her full name, Sonia Jalal. Am I pronouncing that correctly as far as
Yeah,
your last
that's
name?
fine.
Excellent. And with the website there, www.lifecoachingformindset.com is where you can reach Sonia and learn much more about her principles, practices, and a wealth and depth of experience that she's brought with us today. Any final comments, Sonia, before we close?
No, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure sharing this knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate you joining us, and I hope that you would help us in the future with another appearance at some point, and we can hear how your coaching practice is going.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Likewise. And as for me, you can always find me here at the Center of Calmness. I'm DK Warner.